Shedeur Sanders has officially fallen out of the first three rounds of the NFL draft. Let's talk about it. Shedeur Sanders is the Colorado quarterback, son of Deion Sanders and Heisman number 8 finisher this past college football season. He had a 74% completion rate with 4,134 yards passing and 37 touchdowns. Now, those are the good things that Shedeur Sanders has going for him. The bad things, however, are a lot more eye opening than a lot of people realized, that we can now accept meant a lot more than those plain simple stats. The bad stats start with his rushing yards. He was accredited for negative 127 rushing yards in his 2 seasons at Colorado. He threw 10 interceptions in 2024 alone, up from his 3 interceptions in 2023, so some noticeable regression there. He took 94 total sacks in his 2 years at Colorado, including 42 this past year. He also only averaged 7.4 air yards per attempt this past season. That ranks 103rd out of 124 qualified quarterbacks, meaning that every pass that he threw, on average, went less far in the air than the other 102 quarterbacks that were ranked ahead of him. This is something that a lot of people can't realize if you don't watch Colorado play and you haven't watched the tape. But he throws a lot of checkdowns and he throws a lot of screen routes, which is really surprising for a player who takes as many sacks as he does and holds onto the ball for as long as he has. It's just proving that his decision making might not be up to the standards of the other quarterbacks that went ahead of him. Sanders also was pretty universally ripped for his interviews that he had with teams and scouts throughout the process leading up to the draft, coming off as brash and lacking humility, never taking responsibilities for issues at Colorado or within his game. Now, speaking of the other quarterbacks that were taken ahead of him so far, let's take a look at the first quarterback taken, Cam Ward, and let's try to find some of the differences between him and Sanders. Comparing Cam Ward to Shedeur Sanders might seem meaningless at this point, as Ward went number 1 overall, and Shedeur hasn't even been picked yet into day 3 of the draft. But let's quickly run through the reasons that Ward was picked number 1 and Shedeur wasn't even close. Now, Cam Ward, if you look at his numbers from his time as an FBS quarterback, he improved every single year in completion percentage, yardage, touchdowns, interceptions, sacks taken, quarterback rating, and average yards per completion, all while throwing less total passes every single year. Now, this helps to show that he is developing as a player and improving year after year. He's taking to the coaching, he's taking the points in his game that might be negative, turning into positive, all while showing an immense amount of creativity that has NFL scouts salivating coming into this draft. When we take a look at the other quarterbacks that were taken ahead of Shedeur Sanders, there are some obvious traits that set a couple of them apart. We've already spoke on Cam Ward's creativity. Jackson Dart has an incredible deep ball and a playmaking mix that is just something that scouts really believe they can build upon. And then Jalen Milroe's athleticism is just elite for a quarterback position. He ran a 4.37. His running ability with the ball is very impressive for a quarterback. It's just he lacks accuracy and trust in himself and his technique, and that's why he didn't perform as well as a bunch of the other quarterbacks. Tyler Show is a projectable player who battled a lot of injuries throughout his college career. He had a broken collarbone in 2021, limiting him to 4 games. He had a shoulder injury, missing 6 games in 22, and he played 4 games before breaking his leg in 2023. His only healthy season was this past year, where teams now believe they can develop him if he's able to stay healthy, as he showed a good ability to make elite throws deep and intermediate. The Browns choosing to draft Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders at the end of the 4th round is really where the comparison starts to come into question. Gabriel and Sanders have very similar stats when it comes to completion percentage, where Sanders is slightly higher by 1.1%. Average per attempt, where Sanders has the edge with a zero point 0.1 yard per attempt difference. In touchdowns, Sanders beats Gabriel by 7 total this past year. Gabriel threw 4 less interceptions last season than Sanders did. But the differences really start to come when you look at Sanders took twice as many sacks, 42 for Sanders versus 21 for Gabriel. The quarterback ratings are also very similar. Sanders beats Gabriel by 3.3 points. The other large difference that we see is in rushing, where Gabriel ran for 149 yards and 7 touchdowns, and Sanders ran for negative 50 yards and 4 touchdowns this past season. Looking ahead to day 3 of the NFL draft and the start of round 4 happening today, it is very possible that Will Howard, the quarterback from Ohio State, goes ahead of Sanders as well as the guys that have come before him. Howard has a higher average per attempt compared to Sanders. They're comparable in their accuracy, what is supposed to be Sanders' most notable trait, at 74% to 73.1% Sanders to Howard. Howard has prototypical size at 6'4", 235 pounds, and while Sanders isn't considered small, standing 6'2", 215 pounds, teams typically prefer that their quarterbacks have a larger frame so they're able to take more hits. And as someone who's taken a lot of hits, as Sanders has, that's pretty important in the evaluation process. The turnovers are also similar, but the competition faced is not. Howard won the national title last year in the Big Ten at Ohio State, and Sanders couldn't clinch his division in the Big 12. It will be interesting to see which team takes Sanders in the draft in day 3, if any teams do at all, as a lot of QB needy teams have already drafted their guy. Looking ahead, teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Dallas Cowboys, the Los Angeles Rams, the Indianapolis Colts, the Miami Dolphins, and the New York Jets could possibly take a quarterback or take Sanders himself. I think the big takeaway from this is that players can't be a problem, specifically at quarterback. Teams don't want their franchise quarterback to be a guy that can't take all the lumps and handle everything that comes with the position, both mentally and physically, and without anything mind blowing athletically that teams can get behind and can dream about. It's hard for players to have these deficiencies and still get drafted high. Let this Shedeur Sanders situation be a cautionary tale to any future players thinking that they are bigger than the NFL. The NFL is king, and they always will be. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe to Ballhawk Sports Media for more NFL content. On the screen is going to be my most recent podcast episode where I did a mock draft a few days before the NFL draft started. So if you'd like to watch that, check it out now.